Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Box. My name is Tamara Renée. I am founder of Insight EQ Solutions, LLC. I'm an organizational development consultant. I specialize in leadership, emotional intelligence, and resilience. And it feels really good to be recording again. It's been a while since I recorded a podcast episode, but really excited to be here. And in today's episode, I want to focus on an important topic, given where we are in terms of the job landscape. And many people are experiencing layoffs due to macroeconomic shifts, due to technological disruption. And it's a really difficult time for a lot of us. And I will even say for myself, it's been challenging navigating my own career transition and even finding my place, as a consultant, right? So there are so many of us navigating twists and turns and trying to find our place. This is a really important time for us to pause and reconsider what it is that we are looking for from the workplace. Of course, yes, we're all looking for income and the ability to take care of ourselves and support our families. And all of that is really important. But I think there's also something shifting more fundamentally about our relationship to work and the purpose of work. And so this podcast episode is an invitation for us to start reimagining what a new paradigm of work looks like. In this podcast, I want to focus on the way that we construct meaning and well-being and satisfaction and happiness. Like, how do we derive those things from work? I think there are opportunities for us to begin rethinking what the purpose of work should be now and what makes work fulfilling, what makes it meaningful, and what changes can be made at both the individual and the organizational level to help facilitate a new way of making meaning and finding happiness and joy in the work that we do. And so this is an important conversation, I think, because one, the boundaries between work and our personal lives are blurring tremendously. Long gone are the days for many of us, especially if you're a knowledge worker, and even more so if you have the capacity to work from home. Long gone are the days where, you spent your 9 to 5 in an office, being able to focus on work, and then you left your office for the day and you didn't have to think about work until the next day. That's not the case for most of us. The other thing that's changing is more and more people are looking for work that is satisfying, that is meaningful, that is purpose-driven. So in previous generations, people saw work as a means of earning an income, and that was it. But we're seeing, again, this blurring of boundaries between our work personas and our personal, who we are in the real world, right? Our real personalities, people wanting to bring their authentic self to work, people talking about personal issues or exhibiting vulnerability in team meetings or in the workplace, showing up in ways that were probably frowned upon not too long ago. Okay. So because there's this blurring of those boundaries, people are wanting to find work that is meaningful and that is a reflection of who they are and what matters to them. So I guess the question is, should we be looking for happiness at work? Should employers be working to make employees happy? Who bears responsibility for our ability to experience joy and meaning and satisfaction? Another question that I face a lot when I work with my clients is, how do we invite employees to play a more active role in their own well-being and happiness despite organizational constraints, despite having limited control? Like, how do we see this as a partnership? How do we get organizations and their employees to collaborate on making the workplace an environment where people can experience more meaning and joy and satisfaction? And so just to kind of set the context for how work has changed, one, with the pandemic, we know that it accelerated numerous changes, such as our ability to work from home. There have been irreversible shifts in the way that we work and how we collaborate with each other. The other thing is technology is enabling more automation, flexibility, the ability to collaborate with people in different parts of the world, the speed of information, the dissemination of information. We're being hit with way more information than we ever have. And to what extent is that translating to meaningful communication? That's a different story, right? Another change that we're seeing in the workforce is, there are demographic shifts. We are seeing people from multiple generations all working together, and that poses different challenges. We have a huge influx of younger workers entering the workforce who expect autonomy and flexibility, and they also have higher expectations around ethics. Right? What is the mission of the organization, and how is the company carrying out that mission in a way that is ethical? Another really important change that we're seeing is how organizations are becoming flatter. There are fewer opportunities for climbing that ladder, for upward mobility, if you will. And so with a decrease in those vertical opportunities, how are employees finding opportunities for growth, right? So that's changed. That's a fundamental shift. And I think another key point or key change that we're seeing is the average tenure has decreased significantly. So people are not spending as much time in a role or in a career even as they were before. We're seeing people navigate multiple career changes throughout the course of their life. So when we look at the way that work has changed, when we think about finding happiness, finding meaning, finding purpose in our work, we're navigating tremendous change and transformation. We're seeing that work is having a much bigger influence on our personal lives and vice versa. The other thing is we're seeing increased burnout. This is due to combination of rapid technological advancements and macroeconomic uncertainty. When it comes to technological shifts, people are being asked to do more. There's an assumption that technology makes you more productive, but a lot of us are recognizing that just because we are generating outputs more quickly, that doesn't necessarily translate to being more effective or more efficient or more productive in our roles. So that's something that we're experiencing. And then when it comes to macroeconomic uncertainty, employers are tightening their belts. There's a move toward cutting costs, and we're seeing many layoffs across industries. And so what happens is, with technology and with reduced staff members, there's this expectation that you should be able to do more with less. So that's contributing to increased burnout. Lastly, following the pandemic, there are huge shifts in employee expectations. And so there's like this ongoing tension or power struggle between employers and employees. We're going to continue to see the pendulum swing, right, in both directions. Right now, employers have the upper hand, and we're witnessing the fallout of that. The pendulum always swings. We'll see what happens when it swings in the opposite direction. But yeah, we're at a really tense moment. And especially with artificial intelligence, I think there are existential questions around what it means to be human. What does it mean to be an employee? What do I have to offer that differentiates me from technology? Where is my value now? Where does my value lie? We're working to redefine what it means to be an employee, to be a worker. And I think employers are also needing to answer that question as well from an organizational perspective. The way that we find meaning, the way that we find happiness and joy and satisfaction and well-being in our work, that is undergoing a huge shift. And so with that being said, let's talk about what does it mean to be happy? What does happiness mean? How do we define it? According to the American Psychological Association, happiness is an emotion of joy, gladness, satisfaction, and well-being. And luckily for those of us in the fields of organizational psychology and organizational development, there are lots of studies that we can turn to with respect to how satisfaction and well-being have been measured. But there's a fundamental problem with these measures. The research that we have is looking to the past for insights in a context that is rapidly changing and evolving. The ways that we've understood satisfaction and well-being are not necessarily going to apply today, or they might still apply, but the way that we implement those strategies will need to be reimagined. The nature of work is changing, work becoming more team-oriented, which brings its own set of challenges and opportunities, because with increased collaboration, comes increased conflict, right? Conflict over how the work gets done, conflict over values, cultures clashing. There are higher expectations of autonomy. There's less support from employers now, and I'm seeing this more and more, especially with respect to hybrid workforces and remote workforces. There's this expectation that employees hit the ground running. Previous work on employee satisfaction and well-being typically measured the extent to which employees are happy with the job itself or happy with the company. But I think because of that work-life spillover that I've mentioned, there's an opportunity for us to bring a more holistic and inclusive framing to this conversation. It's no longer just, do we have the right benefits in place? Are salaries competitive? It's also, are we nurturing the individual? Are we seeing this person as a whole person who's not just an employee from the hours of 9 to 5, but a parent and a caretaker to maybe their parents, right? How do we cultivate environments that view the employee as a whole person? Not to say that you're responsible for that person's life, but again, our understanding of happiness and satisfaction in the workplace needs to become more inclusive, more holistic because of the way that these boundaries have been blurring. And so as we think about how we reimagine the way we've been doing things, both at the individual and organizational level, I want us to think about how we might look back at what ancient philosophers had to say about happiness and human flourishing, and how might looking back actually help inform our views today? And how do those philosophies overlap with existing theories in organizational psychology and what we know about what has previously contributed to employee satisfaction? And so in this section of the podcast, I'm going to be exploring insights from classical Greek philosophy, Confucianism, hedonism, and Stoicism, and see what we can learn from these ancient philosophers around what contributes to human flourishing and how might we adapt those principles and philosophies to the challenges that we're experiencing right now. So let's start by looking at classical Greek philosophy, and we'll look at Aristotle, a very influential philosophical thinker. Aristotle's view was that we shouldn't pursue happiness. Instead, he felt that we should pursue something called eudaimonia, which has to do with flourishing. And his view of flourishing involved fulfilling your unique function or purpose with excellence. So how do you bring forth your unique skills, abilities, interests, strengths, talents, all of what is unique to you? How do you bring that forth in an excellent way? And so we're touching on themes here of ongoing growth and development, authenticity, the pursuit of things that are personally meaningful and fulfilling to you because they are extensions and expressions of your unique self. And this is very different from the way that we've typically looked at career success, which is, chasing titles, chasing salaries. Aristotle felt that pursuing your unique essence with excellence, that's what would contribute to flourishing. So that kind of flips our current model of career success on its head, which is all about external achievements. Aristotle believed that fulfillment would be more internally derived. And so what that says is that the work itself is less important than your orientation or your attitude toward the work. Less about, I'm a manager now, or I'm a VP, or I'm an executive. That in and of itself isn't going to bring you joy. Happiness being a byproduct of eudaimonia, being purpose-driven and expressing and fulfilling your unique function. The byproduct of that is joy. And when you are pursuing eudaimonia, it's less about the work itself and more about what you are bringing to the work. Interestingly enough, this does overlap with existing theories of satisfaction and motivation. For example, Hackman and Oldham believed that meaningful work was a key variable when measuring employee satisfaction and motivation. What's interesting about the way that Hackman and Oldham defined meaningful work is that task variety, task identity, significance, that's the content, that's the what. But when we look at the psychological layer, I think for most of us, we attach significance to our work because to a large extent, we see the work as something that defines us, especially in Western culture. The first thing people tend to ask you when at a networking event or at a social event is, what do you do? Because there's this very strong tendency to correlate who you are with what you do. And I think what's happening with the way that the whole landscape of work is changing and being disrupted, what's happening is that more and more of us are feeling called to not necessarily allow the work we do to define us, but we're reversing that. We're flipping that frame of reference. Instead, what we're saying is, I'm going to bring meaning to the work that I do. I am defining the work. Bringing my essence to the work that I do is what matters, not the other way around. It's not that the work itself is giving me meaning. I'm finding ways to infuse meaning into my work. And so the work becomes a mirror rather than something that defines you. Speaking of finding meaning and purpose, I want to shift to an ancient Chinese philosopher, Mencius, who is associated with Confucianism. Mencius believed that people are innately good, and he referred to this innate goodness as the sprout of benevolence, right? He felt that there was like a seedling of goodness that exists in every human being. If there are people who behave in bad ways, Mencius believed that that was a failure of the environment, that sprout of benevolence, that innate goodness was not nurtured and cultivated and given room to grow. And so how does this touch on happiness in the workplace? What matters here is as work continues to evolve, I think what will differentiate successful organizations from those who fall by the wayside is that the organizations of the future will be mission driven. They will be able to tie their mission to positive impacts and outcomes for clients, for customers, and for the broader ecosystem. Successful organizations will be dedicated to solving our worst challenges and will be committed to doing good. This means that they will not be shunning what we call corporate social responsibility programs. This is beyond ticking a box. This is beyond saying, oh, we need a CSR initiative so that we look good to investors or we look good to our clients. This is beyond that. This is like the fundamental reason that the organization exists is to do good, is to help with solving challenges. Again, the workforce is changing. Younger generations want to find meaning and purpose in their work, and they're wanting to work for organizations that stand for something. And as you can see, if you have eyes, the challenges that we are facing as a species are numerous and seemingly insurmountable. So we need organizations who are, yes, focused on profits, that's fine, but profitability would be a byproduct of being able to solve a challenge in a meaningful and constructive way. And what that does is it activates and nurtures that sprout of benevolence that exists in all of us. And so that's where I think Confucianism has a place in terms of helping us to reimagine how we find meaning and happiness in our careers. The next is Epicurus. He was a hedonist, and not the modern take on hedonism, which is about partying and pleasure. Epicurus believed that we should pursue basic pleasures, simple pleasures. And he talked about having an absence of pain in the body and disturbance in the mind. Essentially, that those two things being fundamental to living a happy and joyous life, in addition to having meaningful connections. He really valued friendship. What I like about Epicurus's view is that he focused on embodiment. So yes, there are the psychological rewards from doing meaningful work and achieving something, accomplishing something. That's great. But beyond that, there is what we need at the level of the body, our physiological well-being and our emotional and mental well-being. Those two things are important. And it reminds me of another theory that is well known in organizational psychology. It's Herzberg's two-factor theory. And Herzberg, what was really insightful about his theory was that he did not see satisfaction and dissatisfaction as opposites, but as completely distinct constructs, and that there were things that led to satisfaction, but don't necessarily erase dissatisfaction. And he looked at the things that need to be done to reduce dissatisfaction as hygiene factors, and then the things that increase satisfaction as motivators. The hygiene factors map perfectly to what Epicurus was talking about when he was championing hedonism as absence of pain and disturbance in the mind and the body. Organizations can cultivate environments that reduce those things that contribute to dissatisfaction, right? By making sure that employee well-being is a priority. It's important for employers to acknowledge the limits of employee control. There are things that need to happen at the structural level, at the process level, at the programmatic level to enable well-being. Organizations can play a role in being facilitators of employee well-being without necessarily being responsible for well-being. But I also think the onus is on organizations not to endanger employee well-being. Last but not least, I want to focus on Epictetus, who was a Stoic philosopher. I do practice it in my own life, not the extreme form. I don't see emotions as bad, but I do believe what Epictetus said about focusing on what is up to us while letting go of things that are not up to us. Epictetus believed that we are only in control of what's internal, the way that we respond to things, the way that we interpret things, and that everything external to us is outside of our control. And he firmly believed that we should not be seeking happiness in externals for that very reason. If your happiness is contingent on things outside of your control, you will be unhappy. And so this is where I think employees bear responsibility for really thinking about where they are placing their expectations. Are they expecting things outside of them to conform to their preferences? And where can we learn to let go of that dependency on external achievements? You know, having external validation, titles, having certain perks or benefits. There are things that we may over rely on for our happiness and our well-being that can contribute to a lot of dissatisfaction, pain, and suffering, because when we realize that we're not able to control those things, it can create despair. There's a needs theory or a motivation theory in organizational psychology. It's McClellan's theory of acquired needs. And McClellan believed that we all develop through socialization a need for affiliation, achievement, and power. What I think is interesting about that theory is how our dependency on external circumstances to meet our needs sets us up for unhappiness, sets us up for despair, sets us up for disappointment. Because, for example, if you have a need for affiliation and you're working with a manager who is not very friendly, do you become unhappy? You know, where are you deriving your joy from? Epictetus and Stoic philosophers believe that you can only derive happiness from within. And your best bet is to look for opportunities to meet your needs internally rather than externally. This touches on my own framework when I talk about needs integration. You know, very similar to McClellan's theory of acquired needs and other theories of human needs. We do have a need for closeness. We do have a need for autonomy, and we have a need to feel competent and to achieve things, rather than seeing these needs as hierarchical or antagonistic even. None of these needs emerge in a vacuum. They co-occur alongside each other. And the ability to integrate our need to feel accomplished and to feel empowered and to recognize our inherent interdependency with life, everything that exists. I think we need an internal orientation rather than an external orientation. Finding ways to meet our needs internally. Even our need for connection can be met internally just by recognizing your connection to your environment, feeling connected to the work that you're doing, feeling connected to something beyond your goals and desires, something larger than yourself. So there are ways to meet our needs internally. And I do think that as systems and structures reorganize, we're facing a lot of chaos and disruption right now. There's less reliance on the external environment to meet our needs. We're having to turn inward to meet our needs. The more that we can do that, the more we will experience happiness, well-being, joy, and satisfaction, regardless of what our work looks like on the outside, or regardless of what external challenges we're facing, whether we're facing it in the market or in the workplace or with specific colleagues. So as we come to a close, I just want to end with some key takeaways. In a rapidly evolving context, characterized by ongoing disruption and chaos and uncertainty, happiness is not something that we should be pursuing as an end, but instead we should look at happiness as a byproduct of several strategies that emphasize things like bringing your unique self, more of your unique essence, your strengths, your gifts, bringing more of who you are into the work that you do, finding opportunities to extend goodness and to partner with others whose mission is the same. I think prioritizing our well-being, our self-care to the extent that we can is important. And finally, shifting needs from external to internal, having an internal orientation to meeting our needs. I think those are some key takeaways for us as individuals. At the organizational level, some ways that organizations can be better facilitators of employee happiness and well-being include things like job enrichment opportunities, which make work more meaningful, providing employees with stretch opportunities, job rotation, opportunities to grow and develop and maybe acquire new skills or connect with others in the industry. These are all ways to enrich jobs in an era when climbing the corporate ladder is not, it's just not going to be an accessible path for the majority of us. So we'll have to find other ways to feel that we're achieving some type of success or progress in our work. The other thing that organizations can do is tie their mission to positive outcomes, connect work to an important mission, and really commit to investing in different CSR initiatives. Again, not for the sake of checking a box. It's important for companies to align CSR initiatives with their business strategy so that it feels natural and it makes sense for the company. It's also important to connect the work that employees are doing at an individual level to those broader outcomes. And then finally, organizations can work to cultivate environments that facilitate well-being. This looks like designing different programs and incentives in ways that enable employees to feel empowered to take care of themselves. With that said, thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm interested to hear your feedback. What do you think we should be thinking about in this new era of work? How have you been finding happiness, joy, satisfaction, meaning, well-being? How have you been either finding or cultivating these things in your work life? Or if you're an organizational leader, what steps are you taking to be a better facilitator of these things for your employees? I look forward to hearing your feedback. You can email me at tamara@livebeyondthebox.com. I love to be in dialogue with my listeners. And if you want to learn more about my work as an organizational development consultant, you can visit insighteqsolutions.com. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Take care.